It's 10 o'clock. This is Sky News at 10. Our top story. The Health Secretary prescribes a fresh deal to resident doctors, but is it enough to avert next week's strike?
The BMA is threatening to douse the NHS in petrol, light a match and march its members out on strike.
It's a real shame that we've got to this stage at such a late stage in the process. We first wrote to the Secretary of State hours after our last round of industrial action ended, and he didn't reply to the letter for well over a week.
Also tonight, 34 lords and ladies are leaping, with the boss of Iceland and Olympic swimmer Sharon Davis among those named in the latest list of political peerages. The US seizes an oil tanker off the coast of Venezuela as its defiant president holds a rally for his supporters. A peace prize and the promise of a reunion. The daughter of the Venezuelan opposition leader accepts her mother's award. Unable to find harmony, Iceland becomes the 5th country to boycott Eurovision over Israel's participation. And we'll take a first look at tomorrow's front pages. That's coming up in our press preview from 10:30 right through to midnight. Hello there, good evening. The British Medical Association says it will consult its members on a new offer from the government which could avert a walkout by resident doctors in the run-up to Christmas. Medics are due to go on strike for 5 days from next Wednesday in their row over pay and concerns over training places. Well, the offer from the government includes a rapid expansion of specialist training posts, but no further pay rises. The Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, has urged doctors to accept the deal and accused the BMA of playing games with the lives of patients and NHS staff if they refuse to call off next week's action.
The BMA is threatening to douse the NHS in petrol, light a match and march its members out on strike. This represents a different magnitude of risk to previous industrial action. The BMA Resident Doctors Committee is in dispute on 2 issues: pay and jobs. On pay, resident doctors have already received a 28.9% pay rise, the highest in the public sector. For a first-year resident doctor, that is the equivalent of a £9,400 pay rise. I have been consistent, honest and upfront with resident doctors, but we cannot go further on pay this year. There is a gap between what the BMA is demanding and what the country can afford. Nor would further movement on pay be fair to other NHS staff, for whom I am also responsible, and many of whom will never in their careers earn as much as the lowest paid doctor. As I've made clear to the BMA and other trade unions, I am open to discussing multi-year pay deals with any trade union if we stand a chance of bridging the gap between affordability and expectations. On jobs, I have much more sympathy with the BMA's demands. I have heard the very real fears resident doctors across the country have about their futures. It is a legitimate grievance that I agree with.
Well, the chair of the BMA's Resident Doctors Committee, Jack Fletcher, says it will now put the offer to its members, but warns it may be too little, too late to avert the forthcoming strike action.
What I would say is it's a real shame that we've got to this stage at such a late stage in the process. We first wrote to the Secretary of State hours after our last round of industrial action ended, and he didn't reply to the letter for well over a week. We've then had sporadic talks, and it's a real shame that we are where we are. We would have preferred to have been in a situation where we had a real negotiation to get to a deal, but sadly Mr. Streeting has put this on to us at the 11th hour. We think that members should have their say. Are a member-led organisation, and they will ultimately have the say about next week's action.
Well, our health correspondent Ashish Joshi is here with me. Strong words from the Health Secretary today as he made this offer amid, of course, a severe flu outbreak hitting hospitals, Ashish.
Yes, we're entering into what is essentially crunch time for the NHS. We have a flu outbreak, which means thousands of people are in hospital when they weren't at the same time last year with flu. So we have a much bigger outbreak. It's come earlier. And also there is no peak in sight. So all of that puts extra pressure on the NHS. Having resident doctors out on strike essentially means the hospital grinds to a halt. Everyone has to backfill these resident doctors. We know the elective waiting list, even though trusts are trying not to cancel operations and surgeries, we know that the elective waiting list remains stubbornly high. You can't bring it down with the resident doctors out on strike. It causes chaos. So what West Streeting has done is he hasn't been able to offer them more money. That's what the BMA wants. It wants more money. It wants what it calls parity for its members. It wants its pay brought in line with what it should be right now with inflation and everything else. 29% last year. West Streeting says, I have no more money for public workers. You've been paid the most out of everyone else. But what I can do, and he said it's taking him a long time to get his team to work out the mechanics because of the legal implications. Essentially, they haven't created any new jobs, but what they're doing is they're repurposing existing jobs to make sure UK graduates leaving our medical schools have jobs to apply for. And this is a big win for the BMA. But now it all depends on the membership. So they have until the 15th. If by the 15th they decide they want to have a look at this, they can avert these strikes, which are due to take place on the 17th. Doesn't mean that the industrial action is over, but that gives them time to have a look at the offer from the government. Those strikes planned just ahead of Christmas will be paused, so no strikes over Christmas. And then the membership will look at the deal again to decide whether that's enough to call off industrial action altogether. So it's in two stages, but essentially what West Streeting and the government wants is the strikes which are due to take place next week not to go ahead. He needs some headroom in the NHS for the hospitals to react to this flu crisis and keep its doors open for emergency departments and carry on with the elective waiting list too.
We'll see what happens next week, shall we? Ashish, thank you. I know we'll hear from you a little later in the programme, but for now, thank you. Now, the chairman of the supermarket chain Iceland and a former number 10 director of communications are among 25 new Labour nominations to the House of Lords, while the Conservative leader has nominated the former Olympic swimmer and women's rights activist Sharon Davies. Well, she spoke to us a little earlier.
We've got the guidance from the Equality Act and the Supreme Court ruling, which was in April this year, and it's been sat on Bridget Phillison's desk now for 3 months. It makes it very clear that biological sex is the reference for sex, and then when we're talking about either sport or a private space, that must be based on biological sex. And then what we have to do is find alternatives. You know, it surely can't be beyond the will of man that we can create some neutral spaces, or that we make men's spaces safer for non-conforming men. What we can't do is throw women's rights and women's safeguarding and all the things that women have worked for the last few decades under the bus.
Sharon Davies there. Well, let's go live to Westminster and our chief political correspondent, John Craig. Labour packing the Lords, it seems. John, give us the highlights.
Well, Labour have got 25 of the 34. Tories only 3, Liberal Democrats 5. Tories are most miffed that the Lib Dems have got more than they have. Sharon Davies, well, of course, a well-known Olympic swimmer, got a silver medal at the Olympics. Since then, she's become, in recent years, a big campaigner on trans issues, gender issues. She spoke at the Conservative conference this autumn. She insists she's never been anti-trans. She says she's just pro-female. Now, the Labour list is headed by Richard Walker. Now, he is the boss of the Iceland Foods Company. Now, he is interesting, controversial, you might say, because he was a Tory supporter. He wanted to become a Conservative MP at one stage, but in 2023, he said the Tories were out of touch and defected to Labour. Now he has been rewarded with a peerage. Now, other names, Matthew Doyle, former number 10 Director of Communications, one of 3 spin doctors, if you like. The others, Catherine MacLeod, a former political editor for the Herald in Scotland here, who worked as special advisor to Alistair Darling during his turbulent time as Chancellor of the Exchequer. Katie Martin, who worked for Rachel Reeves. Then there are 5 local government worthies, if you like, all from London, none from the North, Scotland or Wales. 5 local government figures from London. And then, of course, you've got, for example, the woman who, back at the Labour conference in 2023, when a protester threw glitter all over Sir Keir Starmer during his speech, got it all over his suit. Well, the lady who rescued him was Carol Linforth, a Labour Party staff member who brushed all the glitter off and so on. She was the head of operations for Labour. She gets a peerage too. Now, the Conservatives have also awarded a peerage to Sir John Redwood, former MP for Wokingham, former Welsh Secretary, stood for the leadership against John Major back in 1995. And then Simon Heffer, the journalist, has written for the Mail, the Telegraph and others. On the Lib Dem side, 2 hereditaries are going back to the Lords, but there's also Sarah Tether, who was a Lib Dem MP, and then there are 1 or 2 others who, for example, have also done all sorts of jobs for Labour. Tories are crying cronyism. They're talking about the Lib Dems getting more because they back Labour in the Lords. Well, that's not strictly true, because they've been voting with the Tories against the Employment Rights Bill, and incidentally that suffered 1 more defeat in the House of Lords tonight. But Labour insists that the Tories have still got a big majority there. They say David Cameron put 122 peers in the Lords in just 2 years. Sir Keir is up to 62 now. And there is talk of further appointments being made in the future. Labour is still determined to try and redress that balance. But, of course, the Tories will lose 43 when the hereditaries go. Labour have only got 4 hereditaries.
John, with that update from Westminster, thank you. Now, Donald Trump says the United States has seized an oil tanker off the Venezuelan coast. It marks the latest escalation from his administration, which has ramped up pressure on the Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro in the past few months. President Trump confirmed the operation this evening.
We've just seized a tanker on the coast of Venezuela, a large tanker, very large. Largest one ever seized, actually. And other things are happening, so you'll be seeing that later.
Thank you. Can you explain a little more about this Venezuelan oil tanker and share a little more information?
Well, I'll let the people do it, but you see the result, and I guess they probably have released the pictures by now, or pretty soon. You'll discuss that with the appropriate people later on, but no, it was seized for a very good reason.
Well, tonight, President Maduro has been holding a rally organised by his ruling party in Caracas, where he told his supporters that Venezuela is prepared to break the teeth of the North American empire if necessary.
We are willing to fight to our last breath. We will remain loyal to the oath we have made to Commander Chavez and the people of Venezuela. It is not a time to vacillate. It is not a time to cower. It's a time for bravery. It's a time for combat. It's a time to build our Venezuelan homeland.
Well, let's speak now to our US correspondent, David Blevins. This tanker is certainly an escalation, David. Does anyone know where this is all heading?
Well, Anna, we're just getting some more detail from US Attorney General Pam Bondi, who has posted on her X account in the last few minutes that the FBI, Homeland Security and US Coast Guard executed a seizure warrant for a crude oil tanker used to transport sanctioned oil from Venezuela and Iran, she says. She continues, for multiple years, the oil tanker has been sanctioned by the United States due to its involvement in an illicit oil shipping network supporting foreign terrorist organisations. And in her post, she includes some video of the dramatic moment when US enforcement agencies intercepted and seized that vessel earlier today. This does appear to be a significant escalation in US tactics. For the last 4 months, 23 boats have been bombed, killing 87 people. They've always framed that as an operation against drug traffickers. The seizure of an oil tanker, and we're seeing the pictures for the very first time right now, is a departure from that. We know earlier in the year that President Trump imposed 25% tariffs on goods from any country that was purchasing oil from Venezuela. But these pictures are showing us the extent to which he is prepared to shut down the main source of funding for the government of Nicolas Maduro. We don't know the name of this vessel yet. We don't know which country's flag it was flying or where exactly the intervention took place. But we know that the US presence in that region has been building for weeks now. We're talking about a dozen warships, including the Gerald Ford. That's the world's largest warship. A nuclear submarine, some F-35 fighter jets, and somewhere in the region of 15 to 20,000 troops gathering off the coast of Venezuela in recent months. Many observers believe that points more towards an attempted regime change and at oil rather than anything to do with drug trafficking. And you may remember just a couple of weeks ago, the president fueled speculation that airstrikes could be imminent by posting online that he had closed the airspace above and around Venezuela. Well, the seizure of an oil tanker today will certainly add to that speculation that more military intervention may be imminent.
David, thank you very much indeed. And the US has imposed sanctions on the tanker for what Washington said was involvement in Iranian oil trading when it was called the Odessa. We heard from David there that they've not issued the name of the tanker. And when asked, when Trump was asked what would happen with the oil, he said, we'll keep it, I guess. Oil futures have risen on news of that seizure. Meanwhile, Venezuela's opposition leader is on her way to Oslo tonight, too late for the ceremony where her Nobel Peace Prize was handed out. That was accepted by her daughter, who read a speech written by her mother, Maria Corina Machado, describing the country's illegitimate president as a state terrorist.
Maria Corina Machado is the Venezuelan opposition leader who's been living in hiding for the past 18 months after the country's president, Nicolas Maduro, refused to concede elections in 2024. She didn't make it to Oslo in time to receive the Nobel Peace Prize in person. Instead, her daughter, Anna, who she hasn't seen for almost 2 years, collected the award and delivered the speech her mother wrote.
She wants to live in a free Venezuela, and she will never give up on that purpose. That is why we all know, and I know, that she will be back in Venezuela very soon.
In the audience were other South American leaders here in solidarity, and Edmundo Gonzalez, the little-known diplomat who ran and won the presidency when Machado was banned, but is now living in exile.
This prize carries profound meaning. It reminds the world that democracy is essential to peace.
Machado spoke about the pain of families split up and her dream of seeing the millions of Venezuelans who fled one day return. Some of those had travelled to Oslo.
She really deserved this prize, and we are quite happy and proud about it, and I think it's a prize for democracy.
Machado is on her way to Norway now. Her journey out of Venezuela was dangerous. The details have been kept a secret. But she spoke to the Nobel Institute on the phone just before taking off.
As soon as I arrive, I will be able to embrace all my family and my children that I have not seen for 2 years, and so many Venezuelans, Norwegians that I know that share our struggle and our fight.
Machado's family, including her mother, are here in Oslo. When she lands in Norway, probably in the early hours of Thursday morning, she'll be finally reunited with them.
When you are faced with so much injustice, sometimes, you're naive and you think that the world is going to recognize what's going through. And you don't understand that you're facing a huge apparatus that's making propaganda to whitewash crimes.
Machado isn't the first Nobel laureate unable to attend, but her journey, which likely involved covert US help, is unprecedented.
In a way, the absence of Maria Corina Machado at the ceremony at the City Hall in Oslo just underlines the risks that she is taking in Venezuela. But equally, her determination to get here also reflects her determination to win that struggle for democracy in Venezuela.
Machado's presence in Oslo will be an embarrassment to President Nicolas Maduro at a time when Venezuela's leader finds himself caught between growing hostility at home and increasing antagonism abroad. US attacks on drug boats and a massive military presence in the region is raising the prospect of war. Maduro tried to prevent Maria Corina Machado from leaving Venezuela, but now that she has, he won't want her to return. Alistair Bunkle, Sky News in Oslo.
1 in 5 women don't feel able to speak up about their concerns during labour. That is one of the findings of a national annual survey into NHS maternity services across the UK. It comes as maternity care is under the spotlight following a series of damning reviews. A warning: you may find some of this report from our health correspondent Ashish Joshi distressing.
Jack and Sarah's baby Harriet would have turned 9 this year. They never got to celebrate a day of her life. She was stillborn. An independent report found 13 failings in Sarah's care.
The midwife looked and said, "Oh, you're about to deliver the baby. I can see the baby's head. You can only have a water bath. You're too late for anything else." They struggled to get Harriet's heartbeat. They called for a doctor. The doctor said, "Well, your bladder's full. We need to drain your bladder." So they drained that, and then he said, "I'm sorry, your baby's dead," and he left the room. And then they left me for 9 hours trying to deliver a dead baby because of communication error.
Now official statistics show that 1 in 5 women do not feel they're taken seriously if they raise a concern during labour or birth. 1 in 10 women also reported being left alone during this period, a statistic that has continued at the same level for the past 5 years.
Prime Minister, I am particularly concerned by maternity services, and that's why we've commissioned a review so every mother is heard, gets proper care at what should be a special time, and currently too many are failed.
Almost 750 recommendations have been made to improve maternity services, but change has been slow. This week, Sky News has been inundated with phone calls, texts, emails and other messages from mothers who have experienced birth trauma in the NHS. Today's survey shows, sadly, that these experiences are widespread, and it also shows how urgently maternity reform in this country is needed. Nottingham University Hospital has apologised to Harriet's family and acknowledged that it is likely Harriet would have survived had it not been for several shortcomings in her care. And it's not alone. Maternity care reform must happen soon, or more families like Jack, Sarah and Harriet will continue to suffer. Ashish Joshi, Sky News.
A man has been found guilty of murdering a mother and her 3 young children in a house fire in Bradford. The court heard how Sharaz Ali was motivated by jealousy and fuelled by drink and drugs when he set fire to the family home last year. His target was his former partner, but she managed to escape while her sister, nieces and nephew died. Charlotte Leeming has this report.
Caught on camera, the moments before a catastrophic house fire, motivated by anger and jealousy, killed a mother and her 3 young children in Bradford. Sharaz Ali was targeting his ex-girlfriend Antonia Gareth. She'd ended their relationship and was living with her sister Bryony. He broke into her house and doused it in petrol. Bryony and her children were trapped upstairs. Today he was found guilty of their murders and the attempted murder of Antonia.
Nothing will ever fill the silence where their laughter should be. Nothing will ever bring back our family. We will forever carry this brokenness, and yet we will hold on to them tightly in only ways we can now, through our memories, our photos and our precious videos. Those are all we have left now.
Stay there! Do not move! Show me your hands! Show me your hands now. What's your name? Callum. Right.
On the night of the fatal blaze last August, Ali recruited the help of convicted arsonist Callum Sunderland, who was today found guilty of manslaughter. They filled up a canister with fuel from a petrol station and then headed to Bryony's home. Sunderland fled after kicking down the door, but Ali went inside. He poured petrol around the house and hit the lighter. Antonia tried to stop him, but she couldn't.
Despite the screams of Antonia, Bryony, and unfortunately likely the children, despite knowing undoubtedly by this time that Bryony and the children were upstairs with no way of escape, and despite knowing the devastation a fuel-filled fire would create in a residential address, he doused that house in petrol and set it alight.
Ali was captured on CCTV buying a bottle of vodka on the night of the fire. The prosecution said he was fuelled by drink and drugs, bent on revenge.
During the trial, Ali claimed that he only ever intended to harm himself, but the jury simply didn't believe him. He's been left with life-changing injuries, and the judge today ordered a medical assessment into his health before he's sentenced.
The judge and West Yorkshire Police praised Antonia for her bravery as she desperately tried to save her family. Ali and Sunderland will be sentenced at a later date. Charlotte Leeming, Sky News, Doncaster.
Donald Trump has held talks with the leaders of the UK, France and Germany on the proposed Ukraine peace deal, during which the American president said they used pretty strong words. Ukraine is expected to hand its latest peace proposals to US negotiators soon, with a Christmas deadline imposed by the US to agree to a deal. The Prime Minister has paid tribute to a British soldier who was killed while on duty in Ukraine. 28-year-old Lance Corporal George Hooley of the Parachute Regiment was killed yesterday in an accident while testing a new defensive capability. The best-selling author Sophie Kinsella, known for her Shopaholic book series, has died at the age of 55. She was diagnosed with an aggressive form of brain cancer 3 years ago. In a statement posted on her Instagram account, Sophie Kinsella's family wrote she died peacefully, with her final days filled with her true loves, family and music and warmth and Christmas and joy. We can't imagine what life will be like without her radiance and love of life. Iceland has become the 5th country to confirm it will boycott the 2026 Eurovision Song Contest. It's contentious after Israel were given the go-ahead to take part in the competition. But let's bring in our arts and entertainment correspondent, Katie Spencer. And the message from Iceland's broadcaster today, Katie, there is no peace or joy connected to this contest as things stand right now.
Yeah, basically saying even though the organisers insist that it is always an apolitical event, that it is about spreading joy and peace, Iceland believe that the people within their country would see it as a very political move if they were to go ahead and be a part of the contest this year. Today, we've had this announcement because it is the last day when countries can say to the organiser of Eurovision whether they're in or out. Any later than this and they will incur a financial penalty. And on top of those sort of headline-grabbing exits that we had last week from Spain, Slovenia, the Netherlands and Ireland, we had confirmation that Iceland too had been meeting today. Their board met of RUV and they had these discussions, and then they put out a statement afterwards. Stefan Eriksson, the Director General, said there is no peace or joy connected to this contest as things stand. Now, on that basis, first and foremost, we are stepping back. And we've had an update from organisers this evening who have said they are looking forward to welcoming around 35 broadcasters, they say. To give you an idea, earlier this year at the contest, there were 43 countries taking part, so that is quite a dip. But we will know the exact number and names of the countries that are taking part at the start of next week. It's going to be a hard thing for organisers to turn this around, though, because to bring back that lightness after such a messy sort of start to this.
Katie, live for us there. Thank you. Now, are you smart enough to be a spy? You can put your skills to the test with GCHQ's annual Christmas challenge, which was released today. 7 brain teasers are contained in the intelligence agency's Christmas card, but don't go thinking that the illustrations on the front are a sign of easier puzzles. School children helped in the designs on the cards, but the puzzles inside are the work of GCHQ staff, and we're told we'll need skills such as lateral thinking, ingenuity and perseverance to solve them. Bit late for that now, I think, don't you? Well, that was Kind News at 10. Coming up, we'll take a first look at tomorrow's newspapers in the press preview tonight, joined by the columnist and broadcaster Steve Richards and the former Conservative Special Advisor Salma Shah. Welcome. Lovely to see both of you. And among the stories we'll be discussing, this on the front page of The Guardian about how US immigration rules could mean travellers heading to the World Cup next year must allow officials views of up to 5 years of their social media history. That and plenty more when we come back.